There has been an explosion of low-profile mechanical keyboards in the last couple of years. Even big brands like Logitech have gotten into the low-profile mechanical keyboard market. But even though some of the options out there are actually pretty great, I haven't really seen any manufacturers in the low-profile segment of the market doing anything truly innovative recently. At least until I heard about this keyboard here. This is the Lofree Flow. What makes it so special? Let's take a look. Before we dive in, I want to mention that Lofree sent me the Flow keyboard for the purpose of making this review. However, I was not paid to make the video. All the opinions are my own, and Lofree will not have a chance to see the video before it is published. All right, let's get right to it. What makes this keyboard special, at least in my opinion, the most special, is the fact that they have a gasket mount design for the PCB assembly in a keyboard that's only 10 millimeters thick. Now, the main sort of selling point of this keyboard, if you follow Lofree's marketing material and the information that's been on the Kickstarter site for this keyboard, is the smooth and soft typing feel. And I think the gasket mount design is a big contributor to that. It's kind of bonkers to see a gasket mount design in a keyboard like this because you need to have enough room in there to have a little free play with the PCB assembly, but somehow they did it. And it actually has a fair amount of flex to it. You will notice a little bit of difference in how much flex there is depending on where you're pressing. For example, the corners are actually, I think, the stiffest area, whereas in the center you actually have quite a bit of flex. Another differentiator here is we have some new low-profile switches. The switches in the Lofree Flow are manufactured by Kale, and they are full palm switches. I do have a minor criticism about kind of the way you have to get your switches in the Flow keyboard, but we will do pros and cons a little bit later. These linear switches are very smooth, and when combined with that gasket mount design and the PBT keycaps, it does have a very satisfying typing feel and sound, and it is different. It's a little bit more of a subdued sound. Everything about the experience is softer, but at the same time, it's not mushy. Here's a sound sample compared to my Newfie Air 60, which also has linear mechanical switches in it, but I think you'll notice a significant difference in the sound. All right, so I hope you could tell the difference there. There's definitely more of that like louder clacky sound going on with my Newfie Air 60, which has the Newfie Daisy low profile linear switches in it, compared to the Lofree Flow, which definitely has more of that subdued, softer sound to it. So if that's what you're looking for, if you don't really like that louder, clackier sound, then you probably would enjoy the sound of the Lofree Flow. All right, let's take a closer look at all of the specifications of the Lofree Flow, and then we'll cover some pros and cons that I've experienced over the last week that I've been testing it. The Lofree Flow is a 75% keyboard with 84 keys. The case construction is all aluminum alloy and the dimensions are 316 millimeters by 126 millimeters by 24.5 millimeters. However, the main area of the case is only 10 millimeters thick, and it has a weight of 1.25 pounds or 568 grams. The attached feet provide a typing angle of 3.9 degrees, and they are not adjustable. They are technically removable, but the keyboard isn't very stable without them on. Connectivity includes a wired USB-C connection and Bluetooth for up to 3 devices. The power switch on the underside of the keyboard switches between off, wired, and wireless modes. There's no dedicated switch for changing between Mac and Windows key layouts, but you can switch between them with the following key command. The battery in the Lofree Flow is 2000 mAh and the expected use time in wireless mode is up to 40 hours. The backlighting in the key area is white only and has 4 modes. The side lighting has 3 separate modes as well as several RGB color options. The keycaps are low-profile PBT and come in either white or black. The color option also determines the type of switch that you get. More on that later. The switches are new Kale Palm low profile in tactile or linear. The switches are hot swappable, but again, there's more to that story too. At the time of recording this, the Lofree Flow is available for $129 US on Indiegogo, and there's a link in the description. Later this summer, it will be available directly from Lofree on their website, and I will update the link when that happens. All right, let's talk a little bit more about that switch situation. So the color that you choose is actually going to determine the switches that you get in the keyboard. This lighter color option with the white keycaps includes linear switches, and the darker color option with black keycaps includes tactile switches. You can't actually specify that you want tactile switches in the light color option or vice versa. You just kind of get what you get based on the color you pick. You can, however, buy a separate set of 90 switches for about $40 and then swap them out yourself because the PCB is hot swappable. But the location of those two pins is actually slightly different. So that means you can't just put in any low profile switches in the Lofree Flow, and you also can't just take these Kale Palm switches and put them in a different keyboard. So yes, it's hot swappable, but it's pretty limited what you can actually swap in and out. I should point out though, you can change these keycaps if you don't like them for some reason because they do have regular MX style connections for the keycaps. All right, so I already started getting into some pros and cons there. So let's just talk about the rest of the pros and cons that I've observed with the Lofree Flow. So pros first, I really do enjoy the typing feel and the sound. This, to me, again, I've said it a couple times, but this feels and sounds different than other low-profile keyboards, mechanical keyboards that I've used. So soft but not mushy is how I would describe the typing feel, and I enjoy it. I also like the construction other than the feet. I really just wish they were able to figure out a different way to manufacture these feet because, well, they're technically detachable because there's these little screws here, but then the keyboard won't be stable on any surface if you do actually detach them. So don't recommend detaching them. They're also prevent you from setting this on top of a laptop and using it sitting on top of a laptop if you were, potentially interested in doing that. But overall, the fit and finish of this is really nice. It pairs really well with Apple products, as you can tell, by the look of it. You've got sort of especially this lighter color, you've got sort of the classic white and silver, pairs really well with the look of a MacBook or any laptop that has sort of a silvery finish to it. I do think it might be a little susceptible to dents. It's not gonna be, it's not the same thickness as like aluminum case material for a high profile keyboard. That could mean that it's susceptible to dents. I'm not gonna try and dent it on purpose. It's not overly flexible, I wouldn't say, but just be aware of that. Another positive for me is the Bluetooth connection has been very stable for me. Only like after hours of not touching it do I have to sort of wake it up. It seems to stay connected over Bluetooth for a long time. I also have to say I thought I would be disappointed in the battery life because it's expected to only be about 40 hours. I think I went a maximum of 4 days during the week without charging it and not really thinking about it. However, if you are using it 100% of the time as your main keyboard and you have the backlighting on, then it'll probably go back more towards what their estimate is of 40 hours before you have to charge it. All right, now there are some things that I'm not so crazy about or just general, potential cons depending on what is most important to you. I already mentioned a couple things that I think are cons about the switches a few minutes ago, so I'm not gonna rehash that, but just know I count it as a con that you can't pick the switch you want in the color you want. But other than that, I think the main con for me is the execution of the lighting. It's just kind of underwhelming, and there are a couple of reasons why I think the lighting could have been done better. First, the white backlighting in the key area with these white keycaps, you can actually see the individual LEDs even with the backlighting on a pretty low setting. And to me, that's just not a good look. That like semi-transparent appearance to the keycaps, I just don't like the look of that. I find it a little distracting. Here's a quick comparison. I took one of the white keycaps from my Newfie Air 60 and put it on so that you can see them side by side. And the Newfie keycap, as you can tell, is just, it must be denser, thicker material because you can't see the light through it. I'm guessing that's not an issue if you get the black color option, the black keycaps, but if you do get the white color option, just know that, you'll be able to see that light through the keycaps. And second, for the side lighting, I find it kind of odd that there is no color option that actually matches the same color white as the backlighting. The one that I believe is supposed to be white isn't the same tone of white, and I find that a little bit weird. Everything else I think that's a con is maybe something that matters to some people, but not all people. It just depends on what your priorities are. But those other cons are there is no 2.4 gigahertz wireless connection. That's a con to me because I like having 2.4 gigahertz. It's lower latency, a little more stable than Bluetooth. Also, there's no way on a firmware basis to customize the Lofree Flow. It is not QMK VIA compatible, and there is no proprietary Lofree software to do any key remapping or anything like that. So if you need to do any of that, then you're gonna have to use third-party software to do it. So overall, I think the Lofree Flow is a very interesting low-profile mechanical keyboard. There's a couple of truly innovative things here that just not a lot of other manufacturers, if any, have done so far. So would I recommend the Lofree Flow? I would, but in a similar way that I would recommend any other keyboard, meaning if it meets your needs, if it checks the boxes of your top priorities, if your top priorities are typing feel and experience, you want a quieter, softer sound, but sort of the satisfaction of a mechanical switch, then yeah, I would recommend the Lofree Flow. If you really, need to have access to the firmware to do complex remapping and macros and layers, then no, I wouldn't recommend it because you can only do that with third-party software. I also think that the current price, what it's listed for on Indiegogo, at least for right now, of $129 US, is reasonable for what you're getting. You're getting a nice metal build, kind of an upscale feel and look. However, I don't know what the price is gonna be later this year when it moves over to Lofree's site directly for ordering through them. So if the price goes up significantly, that might impact my opinion a little bit, but I think for $129, I do think you're getting value for what you're paying. All right, I will definitely be doing some comparison videos of the Lofree Flow against some of my other low profile mechanical keyboards. First up is definitely gonna be the Newfie Air 75. That's gonna be an interesting head-to-head. So let me know what you think of the Lofree Flow down in the comments. Post a question there if you have one, and if you get your hands on one, let me know how you're liking it. Thanks everybody, see you next time.